If you ask the question online, why does New Vegas crash so much? You get the answer, because of a memory leak. When you ask the question, what is a memory leak? And you get the answer that a memory leak isn't a real thing. Now, I'm not very technically savvy. I couldn't define one, let alone tell you whether or not it's real. But what I can tell you is there are very consistent things when it comes to what Vegas does and memory and when it's going to crash. Let's pop the task manager up on the screen. You see, I'm just in the Goodsprings house. I deliberately loaded into here without being on the map yet. So you see, we're at a bit over a quarter gigabyte. Let's see what happens when we step outside. So outside in Goodsprings, we're at a pretty typical 680 megabytes, which makes sense. I mean, obviously, we have a heck of a lot more loaded now than just one room in one house. What's important though is what starts to happen when we start tallying up additional interiors. So we've jumped up to about 750. So what do you think will happen when we leave? Well, it hasn't gone back down. Now this makes a lot of sense. This game came out in the era of the DVD, so what's probably going on here is buffering. As long as the stuff's been loaded into RAM, why take it back out? And these small houses, as we go in and out of them, are going to add a teeny tiny bit more each time. See, 760, another 10 megabytes out of that. Now, I want to show you what happens when we start adding consecutive large things, but first off, let's start by fast traveling, because fast traveling does something interesting in and of itself. Head down to Prim. So what happens there every time you fast travel is it goes and empties the cache, the stored memory, whatever you want to call it. And there are a couple locations where if you go through a door, this will happen as well. This is not one of them. You see we're up to about 850. What I'm going to do now is I am going to run back to Goodsprings, but I'm not going to fast travel. I'll see you there. So back in Goodsprings, we're up to nearly a gigabyte of RAM usage, and that's because we still have those two locations from PIM loaded in, and pretty much all the assets that got loaded in while I was walking here, and well, the end all and be all is that it's a lot more than it was when I walked out of this Goodsprings home in the first place. What's interesting though is that there is a limited number of instances that it will hold. And there we go. We lost some of it. Let's head into this guy's house. And we lost a bunch more. As you replace them with smaller instances, less and less stuff is needed to be, or presumed to be needed to be, loaded in. So why is all this important? Well, it's because Fallout New Vegas is a 32-bit application. That means there's a maximum amount of RAM it can use before it starts to crash. Now, I'm not sure how that number actually winds up coming up because on my previous computer it's 1.35 gigabytes, on this computer it's 1.06 gigabytes. All I know is that it's consistent on both those computers to those numbers, and that seems to be what's important. I'll demonstrate this directly, but there is something else I would like to show before I do. Earlier I mentioned there were a few places in Vegas which did the same memory purge that Fast Travel did, and this is one of them. Camp McCarran does empty the RAM, which is incredibly important because McCarran is also very good at filling it right back up. Let's demonstrate this. So we're up to 900 now that we're inside McCarran. There's two more gates I can go down without a further memory purge. Now the question is, will we hit that critical 1060? And I do believe McCarran itself, barring any extraordinary situations where you start, taking items out of lockers and stuff, which I hadn't really thought about it. That's probably why we get crashes in McCarran. Uh, this should come in just below the threshold to the game crashing, and that doesn't strike me as an accident. Oh, just below a gigabyte again. So it would appear that McCarran is safe for today, but you can see why they'd have to purge it. If it weren't for the memory being purged, we would have hit that 1.06. Oh, we went over a gigabyte there. But there's one place in the game, and, well, you can all guess exactly where I'm heading, where you can consistently drop that number over, in my case, 1060. And naturally, it is in New Vegas. Yeah, if you didn't expect it to be Gomorrah, and you hadn't played New Vegas before. Here in Gomorrah, we're up to 913 megabytes, which is still in the safe zone, but Gomorrah luckily has two other very memory intensive, well, for, 2009, very memory intensive areas, which I should be able to use to trigger a crash. It's usually when I head back to the main floor. And there's our crash to desktop. It proved a little bit more resilient than it usually does. Got a little bit higher than usual. I think it got up to 1.12 gigabytes, which is higher than normal. But either way, it's a very consistent, predictable thing. Let's head back in. And not surprisingly, we're back down to about half a gigabyte because we haven't been outside yet since the game's been loaded. So this will pop it up to, let me guess, 750. And 650 megabytes. Close enough. So what does this mean? Well, it means while you're playing New Vegas, if you have the task manager open and you're watching that number, you're going to learn pretty quick what the magic number is on your computer and either fast travel or quit the game and load back up. You get that number back down, and for the most part, you're not going to have to worry about crashes in New Vegas. For the most part. Still likes to surprise you occasionally. I'd love to hear in the comment section what you guys know about the technicals of this. What is actually going on here? Whether or not a memory leak is a real thing or it's just something that people like me call a situation like this. I'd also love to know whether or not a mod could be written to give the properties of every scene transition the properties of that door I showed you entering Camp McCarran. I guess it would probably be a bit of work, but you've seen some of the work people have put into mods for New Vegas before. I would love to see that. Anyway, that's what I observed with New Vegas. I should have put this out a couple years ago, but I didn't. So here it is, and I'll see you in the next one.